Parlor. Linkwitz Parlor is in the tradition of Secret Linkwitz, who unfortunately passed away like 6 years ago. And he was also the guy who was featuring the first part of the chain, so to speak, the recording side, and bringing things to the medium that we consume. And we are so happy that we have those guys that make these transfers possible from the musicians to us. And it's a tricky task, as we could learn yesterday on the recording techniques by Doug Fern. And today we continue this honoring of the recording and mastering people by presenting the speech of Kevin Gray. Kevin Gray, if you don't know him, he's the master of mastering. He has done thousands of songs and records, and just started his new label, the Cohearent record label, with fascinating transfers from microphone via all valve in a kind of simplified chain all through the cutter head, and then from there, from the vinyl to the speakers, we continue the kind of simplistic form, keeping everything simple and fully analog on this chain. So I'm very happy that we found this opportunity to have Kevin with us, and I thank you very much to being with us today.
Pleasure
Welcome,
to be here.
Kevin.
Thank you very much. So the first question I need to ask of you is, how many of you have seen the 17-minute video that I did about starting the record label and building the equipment? And okay, so all right, so I'm going to have to cover a little bit of that. There is a QR code here to access that. It's on YouTube. Yeah, oh, and there. And I guess there's one at the front door too. Okay, but so I'll back up and tell a little bit about what I did. So back in 2005, I came up with the idea. I just said to myself one morning, wouldn't it be great if we could get modern recordings that have the vintage sound? And so I started thinking about, well, let's see, what does that encompass? And the first thing is that everything was basically all vacuum tube back in the day. The golden age of recording is typically considered 1955 to 1965. So that was all vacuum tube at that time. Yeah, transistors hadn't really started to come into the picture yet. So I thought, well, okay, I'll build an all-valve vacuum tube system from microphones to cutter head. And that was in 2005, and I finished it in 2020. I didn't realize it was going to take 15 years. Through about 2009, 2010, I had gotten all the microphones and the mixer finished, started refurbishing the tape machine that I wanted to do all of this with, which was a Studer C37 tube machine. And by about 2017, I had all of the equipment finished and ready to go. And so we were going to start a sound test, but I was a little nervous that I didn't have the disc cutting system finished yet, because I thought I don't want to start recording and have all these recordings in the can and not be able to put them out. So I plugged ahead and finished the disc cutting part of it in 2020. Well, bad timing, right? COVID hit. And so two things happened during that time. The studio that we were going to use shut down, like gone. And the other thing that happened was, of course, the musicians weren't able to get together and play. So we wound up doing the first recording, the first sound test, the end of 2020. And it went beautifully. And it was with our first artist. Her name is Kirsten Edkins. She's a sax player. It was with a trio playing with her, with a quartet. And then on the final record, we wound up adding trombone for 3 of the 8 tracks. So we had a quintet for that. So that was our first recording, and then more recently we did a recording with Anthony Wilson, who's a jazz guitarist. For those who don't know, he's pretty well known for playing with Diana Krall. He's been playing with her since 2002 or something like that. And also 2 of the other musicians, John Clayton on bass and Jeff Hamilton also play with her. So they are a touring group that plays together all the time. And the other person was Gerald Clayton, John, the bass player's son, who played keyboards, played piano on the record. Also, coincidentally, he had also been the pianist for Kirsten's record, the first record that we did. So anyway, that's kind of the whole thing in a nutshell. I probably should ask question and answer kind of thing to figure out where to go from here. I mean, does anybody have any questions about? Well, okay, let me explain two more things. One is that the other thing that I think that really contributed to the vintage sound was that everything was done either live to mono or live to 2-track stereo back in the day, with the exception of Columbia that was doing 3-track and then mixing down. But most of the great jazz stuff, all the stuff that Rudy Van Gelder was doing for Blue Note, and then also the stuff he was doing for Prestige and a lot of the other labels that he worked with, that was all recorded that way, mixed live and direct to the tape that it was actually cut from. That's the main thing. Oh, and then the other thing was the studio that we wound up doing this in wound up being my living room. But there was a really good reason for it. I have a friend named Rich Capeless who lives back in New York, and he did a wonderful, wonderful website for everybody that's into vintage jazz. He did a website called rvglegacy.org. And I was looking through it and kind of mesmerized by it. And there's kind of the plan for the Hackensack studio in Hackensack, New Jersey. And I took one look at it, I showed it to my wife. I said, that's about the same size as our living room, you know? So we went full speed ahead and converted the living room, dining room area into a recording space. Bought a Steinway B piano, put that in there, which is what Rudy had, and set up the drums in the same orientation with the piano that Rudy used. So we're not trying to completely emulate everything he did, but we kind of used it as a good starting point. And so, yeah. Oh, and then the final point is that in those days, they didn't multi-mic everything, you know. This concept of recording the drums in stereo, recording the piano in stereo, is kind of a bad joke, because what you wind up with is a bunch of 10-foot wide images superimposed on top of each other, and that's not the way music sounds in a live space. So basically, we went really old school, and we're using one mic on each instrument and panning them to position. So the saxophone is there, and the piano's here, and the drums are there. And so it sounds more like you're listening to jazz in a live club. So I think that about covers what we're doing. Yes?
How do you control the bleed if you've got one per instrument?
You don't. And that's part of the magic of the sound. It really is. That's what kind of gives you the sense of the space and you know. So that's a very good question. Yeah, because the only thing that we baffled off on both recordings is the bass, because you tend to get a lot of bleed into the bass mic. Yeah.
It sounds like your wife is a saint if she let you do that.
She is.
I am.
She's right here. Yeah. She can,
Taking credit for sainthood.
you can give her a round of applause too.
Is that the studio that you now have, or have you since been able to find a studio space?
No, we're so happy with the sound we're getting in that room. We're going full speed ahead with it. So I ran mic lines, permanent mic lines, from the living room to the mastering room. The mastering room becomes the control room when I'm recording. And of course I'm doing the all tube mastering in there too. So, yeah.
So you talk about tubes, what about microphones? Have they changed a lot from 55?
Yeah, they have, which is why I did clones of original microphones. I built clones of two Neumann U47s, two M49s. I'm using a stereo SM2, which is an original mic. That's my secret weapon for bass, because it's a nickel capsule microphone that's very bright, but it works great on bass because you pick up the fingering and all the juicy stuff from the bass, and it has, you know, good bass response too. So
Why did you build clones instead of just using the originals?
well, in my original concept, I wanted to have matched microphones for both the 47s and the 49s, in case I did want to do actual stereo recording with them. And you cannot find two that match. Not to mention the fact that, you know, U47s are about $20,000 a piece right now, and M49s are probably $15,000 a piece right now. So, but some snarky guy on one of the YouTubes that I saw said something to the effect of, "Oh yeah, those clones are a dime a dozen." You can, it's like, not these clones. Original M7 capsules, original VF14 tubes, original transformers. The only thing that is new is the metal work, which there was nobody making kits when I started doing this in 2005. Now there are very, very nice kits from Europe. But yeah, I had to have a company in Connecticut make all of the parts for the 47s. And yeah, it was a lot of work.
You said basically a single mic over each instrument.
Yes.
You mentioned a stereo SM2 on the bass. You're using like an XY or something?
No. I'm using just one capsule of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
did you
it's
store-
basically the same as a KM56 if you're familiar with that mic.
Yeah.
You know, half of a KM56.
Where did you source your transformers for your gear?
I'm generally using Jensen transformers in most of the places, like in my microphone mixer. That's all Jensen, JE115Ks. But, oh yeah, the other magic bullet is the cutting amplifiers are Macintosh MI350s, which is also the same as the MC3500. It was just the consumer version and the industrial version of the same power amplifier. But I had heard those amps in 1975 in a friend's system, and more recently in the 90s in another guy's system, and they just sound phenomenal. You listen to full orchestra through those amplifiers, and it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. I mean, they're amazing amps. So before I even came up with the project, I had the idea of if I ever built a tube system, I would want those amplifiers to drive the cutter head. And the results speak for themselves.
We're going to play 2 tracks. Then we're going to play them over here first, and we're going to play the same 2 tracks over in this side as well. So you guys don't need to get excited. You'll be hearing the same thing. It's a different turntable, but you know you'll get to hear the same track. So
let me do the lead-in while you're setting this up. So which one do you have up first?
I have the
Kirsten?
No, this
Oh.
the Hackensack with the
Okay.
lands.
Yeah, this is the second album, but it's okay. Yeah, so we're playing the first track on side B, which is called The Lands.
Would you prefer?
This
I
is,
can
no, that's
swap-
all right. No, it's fine. It's this is Anthony Wilson on guitar, Jeff Hamilton drums, John Clayton bass, and Gerald Clayton piano.
Can you look over here a second?
Uh,
Let me try that again.
Photobomb.
Thanks.
Crank it a little more. A little more.
More?
Yeah. That's the turntable.
Yeah, rumble filter is necessary.
It's actually, it's not rumble, it's record warp. Really, that's what it is. Just putting in the rumble filter. Yeah. there's no amp. It's an upright
Guitar.
guitar.
Yeah. Lid off or
Lid open, all the way open.
Don't worry. I'll look at it later.
You want to play this same another track here, or should we?
We should probably play the same track so it makes sense. Here, the same thing.
How long do you want us to play this?
Just the first track.
First full through?
No, first track.
No, just the first track.
Yeah.
First song.
Yeah. You want to play the whole song through?
Yeah, it's up to you.
It's your presentation. What is it?
So that was the setup. This is actually for the first album, for Kirsten's album.
So you put it on a boom.
That's the piano. That's Dynamite Beat.
Microphone orientation.
It's actually with the back of the microphone facing the player so that it's rejecting the sound from the drums. So it's basically looking to the front of the piano strings, but basically over the hammers.
And is radiation pattern for that?
It's cardio.
No, it's okay, yeah, so it rejects.
So I'm trying to get the reject for the bass, which is fine.
Yeah, yeah. Really good drum sound for one mic.
I know. Jeff Hamilton was thrilled, absolutely thrilled. I can tell a real quick story.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's hard to get the bass in the sound.
Yeah, yeah. That was this is great.
Gerald just keeps getting better.
He's amazing.
Very comfy looking.
Thank you. So let me tell a quick story while they're moving that into this room. So Jeff Hamilton, the drummer, has a reputation around town that he'll go in and his drums will be set up before he gets there, and they'll have the whole mic setup done, and he'll come in and he'll say, take that mic away, and that mic away, and that mic away, and that mic away, and that mic away, leaving 2 overheads, a snare mic, and a bass drum mic. So when he walked into my room, very first thing he said is, I hear you record drums with 1 mic? I said, yeah. He goes, be interesting to hear this. Okay. So we did a quick take. He came back into the studio and was grinning ear to ear. And he goes, I think that's one of the best pickups I've ever heard in my drum kit. He goes, you got it nailed.
Where did you sit the mic?
Well, basically right over the center of the drums, so about head height, and kind of try to, between the cymbals, so I wasn't favoring that, but kind of aimed at the snare.
Okay.
And it picks up the kick, 49.
49.
Picks up the kick beautifully.
What is the
Yeah, that's what he said. He'd like to
model
know.
that you said, the 39?
The M49 Neumann.
M49 none?
Neumann. Neumann.
N-E-U-N-N.
M-A-N-N.
Oh, Newman.
Neumann. It's Neumann in German.
Okay,
Well, it's like Newman.
okay.
Out of curiosity, with your 47 clones, were you able to get like Mylar or PVC for the capsules?
Okay, that's a good question. I was using original M7 capsules, but I had them reskinned with Mylar, not PVC. Because if I had these mics built in 2005, the PVC would already be dead.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the problem with PVC. It doesn't have much life. They get hard and crack.
Can I ask you a big
Sure.
picture question? Like, how would you describe the difference in the sound you get from this approach to using whatever your preferred modern state-of-the-art equipment is? And what would you say, out of all the factors in the chain, is the one that makes the most difference?
Well, the last one's the easiest to answer. It's everything. I mean, seriously. You can take one thing out of the chain and it changes the sound dramatically. You know, Kirsten Edkins, the artist on the first record, forced me, arm behind my back, twisted, to put it out on digital because I really didn't want to. I mean, I consider the disc cutting process to be a big part of the sound. And so you don't get that on the digital release. And so I'm not quite sure what we're going to do on Anthony's record yet. But the whole idea was, all analog, all tube, from microphones to cutter head. And if you take the whole cutter head, cutting amplifiers, that whole part out of the chain, I think you're losing a bit of the sound.
What about the difference between a modern all analog, but not necessarily all tube? How would you describe that sound difference?
Well, that's an interesting question. I have done so much recording, full orchestra, you name it, with solid state stuff, and I'm not going to get into the accuracy issue. It's not an accuracy thing. There is a sound to digital, or excuse me, to vacuum tube that I love. It's a coloration, but it's a wonderful coloration, and so that's part of what I was trying to emulate by building this all tube system, was to kind of get what they had in the 50s. People say, well, it sounds cleaner than most of the stuff from the 50s, and there's a simple reason for that. Recording tape is so much better today than the vintage recording tape. 3M111 was terrible. It basically hard clipped at like plus 10, which is 6 dB over plus 4 VU, which is your normal 0 VU. That's no headroom. So that's why you hear breakup on piano and drums on all the old recordings. So people say, well, don't you want to use vintage recording tape? No, that's the one place where I draw the line. It's like.
What's your preferred tape now?
I'm using SM900. It's called RTM now. It's basically an offshoot of when BASF and AGFA merged, they started the SM900, and so it was sold under about 3 names. Originally BASF, and then it was RTM, or no, I can't remember. But anyway, it's now recording the masters. Oh, it was RMG in between.
No, a meter.
Any plan to release any tapes?
3 feet.
No, I don't think so.
You can
Again, I like the sound of the disc cutting system in there. So.
Right. We're probably going to need
We
you guys
have
to
to-
displace, sort of like come around behind you. Well, let's go this way where we don't interdict the turntable.
By the way, the other one for the tape heads in here, it's recorded 18 inches per second CCIR. Because if you record with a 50 hertz machine at 60 hertz, you get 18 IPS if it's synchronous motors.
And then we're going to listen to those.
The two switches down, one, it's the very one, the two switches.
You can cut it.
A little louder.
Much better.
Is the volume okay?
I'm sorry?
Is the volume okay, you say?
Yeah. A little bit, up a little.
A little off.
Yeah, it is.
So, with your mastering hat on, what are you listening to? Is it timbre? Is it like levels? Is it, you know, so many different things you can kind of
All of the
do.
above.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is it like I just bought the new television album which
Uh-huh.
you remastered,
Right.
and so just kind of question of like that mix was probably an older '79 tape. It
Right.
wasn't so great. So how do you approach a project, and what hats do you put on to get the best out of it?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. I got myself in a little trouble on that record because I toned down the upper mid-range a little bit from the original release, and that got a few people up in arms. And Fremer even re-reviewed it and made the comment, and I was like, okay, I wasn't trying to match the original, but anyway. But often I do. I mean, or at least often I use the original as a reference. I didn't have one on that one. And so I was just trying to make it sound a little more pleasing on a high-end system than the original would have sounded. So this whole argument came up about, well, you know, you could have been violating the original intent of the record, right? And then the gentleman over here actually has interviewed the guitarist, and the guitarist made a comment, and apparently it's in his book, that the band wasn't that happy with the way the record came out originally. So much for original intent.
Yeah, Richard Lloyd writes oh, we never liked how this came out. We don't like how the record sounds. And then when I interviewed him, he hadn't heard Kevin's version yet. So I'm like, come on.
Anyway.
One more question.
Sure.
Concerning the playback volume, the Fletcher-Munson curve.
Mm-hmm.
What is your reference? How do you expect people to play them back? This is a trio is a situation where you could almost play in original
Quartet, yeah.
DB levels, so to speak.
Yes.
What do you see as a reference for you?
Well, my monitor level that I use in the studio is basically 85 dB, you know, weighted, C weighted.
Okay.
That's my reference level, and that's usually about where I tend to listen.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was the level that I was listening at when I mixed it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we try to do 85 dB here as well.
What do you monitor on?
It's a custom system. It's Dyne Audio mid-range and tweeter, and JBL mid-bass, and JBL 2245 subs.
You ready to go?
Sure. First track side two?
You can resynchronize your eyes.
Yeah. One more chance to sync them up.
Same song, right?
Yeah.
When you were panning these, where did you pan them?
Piano and bass in the center, saxophone left, drums right.
Okay, any particular left or right position in this?
Left and center right.
Just lean to the side, otherwise it's going to sound like
Leakage will tend to move things a little bit. Good to have you here. Jacket?
No, the Verlaine album's like down there, so the television album's like in this down there. Selling the Hackensack album downstairs. We should have.
The illicit disc.
Takes did you record for each song, and then was each song just one take going to record?
Okay, first question. We did 2 to 3 takes of most of the songs on maybe 2, and this actually was for both albums. Maybe 2 of them we only did 1 take because everybody was just really happy. And all of the takes on Anthony's record are complete takes. I actually did edits on 2 of Kirsten's songs. I won't tell you which ones, but we took a different intro on one and spliced that in, and we took a different sax solo on one and spliced that in. But that was the only editing, I mean, very, very little. And that happened on Blue Note stuff too, you know. A lot of those songs are edited.
Since they're playing in the round like that, and you have to make decisions about where they're going to be placed in the stereo field, like what informs those decisions? Your own personal preference, basically?
Yeah, and in all honesty, I'm kind of doing the Rudy thing. You know, drums on the right, feature artist on the left. You know, unless it's, you know, if it's a trio or if it's, you know, the feature artist is piano, you know, generally that would be in the center. But, yeah. And I forgot to answer part of that guy's question. He said, so everything, so the drums are only on the right and the bass is only in the center and the piano's only in the center. Yes, except for leakage, because leakage will tend to shift things slightly. Anyway.
Earlier, you mentioned the word coloration, favorable coloration. I don't want to misquote you, but I think maybe you once said that what people like about the sound of LPs may actually be an artifact. Was that you, or do you stand by that, or is that what you meant to say about coloration?
Yes, I do. I do.
What was it?
That some of what people like about LPs is an artifact of the process.
So in other words, it might not be the most purest, pristine, scientifically accurate reproduction, but it's the one
No, that's
that everyone
digital, but
would
which
choose.
one would you prefer to listen to?
Right.
All right. High-res digital, very high-res digital. We aren't talking about CDs here.
Right.
They're always inferior.
How much would you say the cutting of a digital file into an analog format brings it back into the analog realm? You know, like where do you capture that magic again?
It doesn't really, but again, it kind of imparts its own character to it. I was really pleased, but yet amused when I did the, actually recorded by this gentleman who's on the banners, Jack Vad. I did the Mahler box set of the San Francisco Symphony recordings of the Mahlers. And those were all from digital files. And Wayne Garcia reviewed it for Absolute Sound and said he compared them to his SACDs and it blew it away. So what can I say? I'm not going to argue with him.
There's another good example. These guys are redoing these.
Yes,
these are digital sources.
This series is done by a friend of mine in Germany. Actually, she studied with me for a short period of time. I can't really say that I imparted that much to her. But her name is Sydney Meyer, and she works at Emil Berliner Studios in Berlin. And she's doing this series. And I'm so happy that she's getting the accolades for it.
To die for.
They're
good.
It's the only time those recordings have had enough bass.
You think that's more because of the stereo image? Because
EQ.
It's
I mean,
EQ,
yeah,
hands down.
They I guess cut them flat or something, and they just, I don't know, to me, most of them were bass lacking, and she's doing it just right.
So your name and a few other key ones show up like as mastered by for almost everything out there, it seems like, and so it almost seems, how could you possibly master all these recordings? Do you have a team you work with?
He works.
No. You just
I work.
Let the wife take that question.
This is my wife.
It's like, I never see him.
a lot of power drinks.
Yeah, no, some coffee in the morning for sure. Strong, black. But anyway, yeah, I work a lot. I stay very, very busy, and I only cut 4 days a week, which seems strange because I cut Monday through Thursday. Because if I cut things on Friday or the weekend, they would sit over the weekend, and they need to be processed within 24 hours, ideally. But I'm doing things like loading in digital files for things that I have to cut over the weekend. So it's like I'm constantly working. I basically take Fridays off, and that's really about my only day off.
Fridays off means that he works on his own personal life. Which should be the label.
Well, that's true. Now. Yeah.
So should we throw out the idea of date night maybe?
That's Tuesday nights.
Okay.
So how many days is this taking?
Oh, that's a good question. Both albums were recorded basically in 2 days. We did a day of rehearsal and then 2 days of recording. And we got probably 75% of both albums in the first day of recording. And the second day was kind of a backup. We did a retake on a song. We did two new songs, I think, on both albums, as it turned out. It was just, so that seems to be the ideal thing that we're trying to do from now on.
So what does an average remaster take you? Is it like a day, or is it a week? Or?
Well, for instance, on the stuff that I'm doing for Rhino Hi-Fi, those are all from original analog tapes, and they might be records that I'm unfamiliar with, and I generally get one of those out a day. But typically, like when I do the Blue Notes, those are 2 a day, because I kind of know Rudy like the back of my hand. I've done so many of them now, and so I know what to expect.
Just
And
listen to the test tones and you know what to do.
no, there are none.
Oh, there aren't.
They didn't do test tones back then.
No kidding.
No.
I didn't know that.
So it's all line to standard,
You
line
have
to
to
tape.
adjust the heads and.
Oh yeah, you have to adjust azimuth, but that's it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
My question, how do you keep your ears and your mind fresh at the end of a day, a long day, versus the beginning? Or do you notice, or should I not ask that?
No, it's a very good question. Well, like I said, I'm
This
usually not
album
doing...
sounds like the end of the day.
Don't say that.
Sorry.
No, but generally, I'm like I'm saying, I'm doing 2 albums a day. Also, I don't listen at 85 dB SPL all day long. I do that when I'm running down. So it might be only 2 hours of an 8-hour day. So the rest of the time is just the mechanical part of actually getting it onto the record. So yeah, no, I don't feel burned out at the end of the day. Yeah.
And we live a quiet life.
At 85 dB.
Well, no, we don't. I come home and chill out to either KJazz, the jazz station, or KUSC, the classical station. That's kind of my go-to to chill out at the end of the day.
That's a good question. What is the recording engineer listening when he or she is not working?
Well, I can tell you that if I'm doing any critical listening, it's to vinyl. I don't really play CDs. We play CDs if we have like a party with people coming over and you need something for background music. That's all they ever get used for in our house.
Okay, any more questions? Then a big thank you.
Oh,
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all the good music that you've helped us.
Thank you.